appreciate Pat and his team's cooperation in putting this all together. So that being said, enjoy the show, and go Habs. Thank you.
We're going to get the debate going just as soon as possible. But before we do, I wonder if everybody could stand and we could just do a pledge. Mr. Bradford spent the majority of his career in Seminole County before retiring to the Sheriff's Department there in 2013 after 25 years of law enforcement. He has a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in strategic leadership and is a proponent of community policing. Mr. Bradford, welcome to the debate. Dave Brannon is a senior captain with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and has been a member of the department for 23 years. He's a native Floridian who has held positions in the Department of Patrol Deputy, Field Training Officer, Patrol Sergeant, and Lieutenant before becoming a senior captain. Mr. Brannon holds a bachelor's degree in organizational management and is working on a master's degree in public administration at Liberty University. Mr. Brannon and his wife, Volusia, have 2 children. Mr. Brannon, welcome to the debate. Mike Chitwood has been chief of the Daytona Beach Police since 2006. Before that, he served 1 year as police chief of Shawnee, Oklahoma, and 18 years with the Philadelphia Police Department, where he held the ranks of police officer, detective, sergeant, and lieutenant. He has a degree in organizational management from Eastern University in Pennsylvania and a master's degree in criminal justice from Nova Southeastern University. He also has 3 daughters and 2 grandchildren. Mr. Chitwood, welcome to the debate. lieutenant and was commander of the department's SWAT team and a special services captain. In January of this year, he was named chief deputy. He is married to Christine, and they have 2 children. Mr. Dietrich, welcome to the debate. And finally, Jim Gillum began his law enforcement career as an unpaid auxiliary officer in the Tampa Police Department. He became a patrol officer, and then a detective, then a full-time teacher at the department's training academy, and finally commander of the bomb squad. In 1984, he was elected sheriff of Pasco County, a position he held for 8 years. He moved to the land in 2007, and this is his first run for public office in Volusia County. He has 8 children. Mr. Gillum, welcome to the debate. So here briefly is how the debate will work. I'll ask the candidate a question, and you'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Then each other candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the same question. And then the first candidate who got to answer the question originally will have 30 seconds at the end to respond to everybody else. Each candidate throughout the course of the debate will get the same number of questions first. And that way everybody gets the same amount of time. Sounds a little complicated, I know. I was very good at those math problems, those word problems, so I'm not sure I get it myself. Let's see what we can do. Okay, we do a name out of a hat to see who goes first, and the winner is Mr. Dietrich. So Mr. Dietrich, you get the first question. If elected, how would your sheriff's office differ from Ben Johnson, who's been the sheriff for 16 years?
First, I want to say thank you for everybody coming out here. I appreciate the opportunity to meet you and to be able to talk to you tonight. As your sheriff, the department will be different in the aspect of exploring technology and bringing technology to the forefront to allow the deputies the equipment and the effectiveness to be able to do their jobs more safely and effectively, which in the end result brings a better work product to the citizens. I believe I've started on some projects already for a real-time crime center that not only is going to benefit the sheriff's office, it's going to benefit every agency out there, because I believe in teamwork and having strong relationships and bonds, not only with the law enforcement community, but with the community as a whole, with all the community leaders and elected officials, because it's all of our responsibility to make sure the safety of everybody. So the difference you'll see is the advancements in technology and the improvements in the relationship of rebuilding the positive ends of law enforcement. That's one of my #1 priorities, is to bring back what we've seen so far with the tragedies of the violence against law enforcement. We just had it happen again in Daytona, where they attempted to murder a law enforcement officer. And we need to rebuild those relationships, and we need to be strong and send a strong message to those individuals that are going to shoot at law enforcement or attempt to kill law enforcement officers, to work with the state attorney's office to ensure that they get prosecution and they get put away in jail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gillum.
Well, first thing I do is review the budget. I'm the only candidate that's done the sheriff's office budget before, been for 8 years. And to see where the manpower, person power is placed, I believe we should see more visible deputies in our neighborhoods. I really believe that. I did that in Pasco County, increased the first month I was in office. I put more visibility out there, and I think that helps reduce crime. That is one thing that has got to be prime. More deputies, more visibility. And I look at this forced overtime, I'm very uncomfortable with that. Very costly to the taxpayers to spend a lot of money on overtime. And it's also stressful on the deputies. We don't want to wear our people out to the point they can't do the job, or they make a fatal mistake. We can't afford that in the law enforcement business. We catch bad press every once in a while for mistakes. If we can avoid those mistakes, everybody would be a lot happier.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford.
First, thank you for having me here today. Let me tell you, if you look around the world today, there is a disconnect between law enforcement and the community. And why is that? If you look here in Volusia County, the reason I see is because law enforcement doesn't go out anymore and speak to the people. Under my administration, we will bring community-based policing back to our communities. A time when law enforcement and the community knew each other on a first-name basis. If we had that today, we wouldn't be having all these issues within Volusia County. The forced overtime, folks, they say they don't have enough money to put deputies back on the streets. Can you imagine? I want you to go and look at the budget and check out how much money they're spending over $5 million a year in overtime, forced overtime. They just spent over 27,000 hours in the comm center forcing people to work. What kind of life is that? So the first thing I would do is look at hiring people so that we can come out here and not force these deputies and civilian workers to work overtime.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you all for taking the time to come out tonight. As your sheriff, one of my top priority is to serve you. The office of sheriff is not about me, it's about every one of you here and every citizen of Volusia County. So I'm going to do everything I can, number one, to make sure we keep crime as low as possible. Just like we've achieved the lowest crime rate in the sheriff's office since 1986. 30 years we've worked very diligently to bring this crime rate down and to continue to do that. We're also going to improve technology so that we have the best technology to stay ahead of the bad guys. Pushing out notifications to your cell phones every time you hear that helicopter circling around your house. You're probably wondering why we're out there. We need to let you know why we're out there so you can help us either find bad guys or find somebody who may be lost. We're also going to do more to take care of our deputies. Our deputies need a sheriff that's going to stand up for them. They get their wages where they need to be and their benefits, and I'm the guy who's going to get that done. Thank you very much.
No applause after answers, please. Mr. Chip.
Good evening. My first 100 days in office, I am going to interview every single employee who's going to get between 20 and 30 minutes with me, sworn and civilian, and tell me what they see, what direction we need to go. It's called participative management style. And then we're going to hammer home technology. The city of Daytona Beach is the leader in Volusia County when it comes to technology. First police department in the state of Florida to have body cameras. I have 150 of them on the street. Real-time crime center. I applaud the sheriff for doing it, but it's an election year. 3 years, we have a real-time crime center that pushes and funnels information out to our officers and makes our community safe. Community relations, huge. The tactics we have in Daytona Beach with school resource officers in our PAL program, I want to emulate countywide. And lastly is dispatch. Everywhere I go, I hear about dispatch. We need to go to a 311 system and work on CRM, Customer Relations Management. That takes the load off of 911, lets the deputies do their job, and solves the small problems along the way.
Thank you. And Mr. Dietrich, you have 30 seconds to finish this question.
I just want to follow up and say 22 years, I'm really proud to say the crime rate in Volusia County in the unincorporated area serving 227,000 residents at its lowest rate in 30 years. What else in your life out there is at its lowest rate in 30 years? So my opponents up here can talk about the dysfunction in our agency. I can tell you that I'm very proud of our agency. And as far as we have programs in place to fill those overtime, some of the overtime is precipitated by federal mandates that we cannot fill for our people that are deployed overseas, for people on FMLA, and as well working at the comm center of creating a program for call takers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Gillum, you get the first shot in the next question. So, several readers raised this issue, and a couple of you already have. In recent weeks, America has witnessed two terrible times when an assailant has targeted and killed multiple law officers. Here, as in the rest of the nation, these attacks have put law officers on edge. What would you tell deputies who are understandably more fearful for their own safety?
Obviously, I tell them to begin with to be careful. What I do is review the call logs. Since we have a CAD system here, I look at the call logs and determine determine what type of calls require two deputies to respond. That's really the way you do your appointment. A lot of the county sheriff's offices over the years just send a few here, a few there, go where to call. No, you have to look at the calls for service. The more serious calls, believe it or not, are the domestic calls. And while we're talking about the crime rate, since mid-1990, the crime rate has declined throughout this country. In some areas, as much as 60 and 70%. The students, and there are studies that show nothing that law enforcement has done has caused the crime rate to decline. Bloomberg was elected mayor of New York. He quadrupled the police department. Crime rate went up. Some of the speculation is absolutely ludicrous at what causes the crime rate to go down, but the experts said it's just doing it. We can't make it go down. We can sure cause it to go up, but we can't make it go down. Take a look at Google. That's what that wonderful library is for. There are articles after articles after articles from the FBI and other major study courses that show you crime rate is going where it's going on its own.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford?
First of all, I would tell my deputies to be safe out there and watch their six. And if there's a major call, you need to go out. Even if it's an easy call, you need to go ahead and have a backup coming through. Here's the thing, folks. Minor crimes may be down here in Volusia County, but look at the stats. Violent crime is up. Look at the FBI stats. It is up here. And we need to do something about it. And what I feel as though that how we can do this is by getting the deputy sheriffs out of their cars and get to know you. Let me tell you, I want to be generous here. 30% of a deputy's day is going to violent, or going to major crimes, going to major calls. But the other 70%, they can be out of their cars, getting to know the businesses, getting to know the residents, getting to know the visitors, so that we can reconnect once again. We have lost the connection with the community. Volusia County has been staying stagnant for years, for decades, and now it's time that we brought a leader that will work for you, not against you.
Thank you. Mr. Brannon?
Thank you. What I would tell our deputies is to rely on your training. The great training that our training staff is providing you is what's going to keep you alive. Look out for each other, watch each other's back, and make sure that you treat people fairly when you're out there. A lot of the sentiment that we hear around the country is that folks don't feel like they're being treated fairly. We need to make sure that we do that, and we need to hold each other accountable. You know, I don't buy into this notion that the crime rate has a life of its own, and the hard work and determination of law enforcement officers has no impact on that whatsoever. I can tell you when I was in Daytona, we were very concentrated on addressing specific crimes and going after wrong people. And by the time I left there 7 years later, the crime rate had dropped by 33%. Today, Daytona has the fourth lowest crime rate of the 16 cities in Volusia County. And you'll never convince me that that wasn't because of the hard work of the deputies doing the job out there and the better connections we've made with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chitlin?
As the only police chief up here, I can tell you that every night I worry about my officers. And as a sheriff, I'll do the same thing. That's what leadership is all about. Number one, not only do we send emails out and address briefings, but I, as the police chief, my command staff, are out there 24 hours a day, backing our officers up, making sure that their equipment, they're trained, that they're thinking ambush, that the supervisors are doing their job and screening their calls. The second thing is I reinforce to our members of our community is the officers, this overwhelming majority of our community in America support the police. Keep that in mind. We're not at war. We're not at war. We have to remember that. And the last thing is, we're looking at a new norm here. We are looking at problems that have never faced this country before. What we saw in Dallas, what we saw in Baton Rouge, what we saw in Pulse nightclub is the fanaticism. These guys are out against the society. They're going to kill as many people as they can, and they go in expecting to be killed. We're living in a new norm. We have to understand that. That's where leadership comes into play.
Thank you. Mr. Meeker?
As sheriff, what I would tell my deputies is I would tell them that they will get the best training that this department can give them. I'm proud to say that they get 27 weeks of training after they come out of rookie school. And that's something that will constantly be evaluated and looked at to determine how we can bring better packages to our deputies. As a SWAT commander, as a narcotics that you work as a team, and telling the deputies from a patrol perspective, they all have to work as a team, working together, ensuring the supervisor is listening, and making sure that those calls that he hears that he's sending additional units there, and making sure that they don't become complacent and giving them the training that they need and the equipment that they need, such as shields, and again, the advancement in technology and information, because information is power. The more information they have, the better situational awareness they'll be able to make on the scene.
Thank you. And Mr. Gill, you have 30 seconds to close.
Concern for the deputies when they're forced to work overtime and they work too many hours and they're not as sharp as they can be when they work a regular shift. Their lives are at risk. Remember the thing about crime rates. Crime rates drop when the public loses confidence in the local law enforcement agency. Have you ever heard somebody say, well, they stole my lawnmower, but I'm not going to report it because they can't do anything about it anyway? No confidence in the agency, and the crime rates go down then. And as an administrator, you have to look at the hard facts. And if that's one of your facts, you need to fix it, which I will.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Mr. Bradford. So several readers raised this issue as well. Many of the African American community here in America believe they suffered unfair treatment at the hands of law enforcement for decades. Recent attacks on police officers followed videotaped instances of police shooting black men. How can law enforcement build a more trusting relationship with African Americans?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Volusia County has cut community-based policing, getting deputies out of their cars and getting them in communities. Volusia County also, if you look at the ratio for the minority communities in law enforcement, any law enforcement agency should mirror the community they serve. We have 432 deputies within Volusia County. We have 17 blacks, 26 Hispanics, 4 Asians, 2 others, and 1 unknown. So how can the minority communities feel as though that they're being patrolled correctly? They don't have folks out there that actually that they feel as though it's treating them fairly, equally and fairly. So under my administration, I am going to go out and look for minorities to come work for Volusia County Sheriff's Office. What they say now is they cannot find qualified minorities. But we have Bethune-Cookman College, which has the #1 criminal justice course in Central Florida. So why are we not finding them there? We need a leader that's going to come out here and treat everybody equally and fairly. And I'm not just talking about when they talk to them, I'm talking about in the communities with services as well.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon.
This continued rhetoric that you can't hire what doesn't apply is just not, it's just bogus. We need to be actively out here looking for candidates to work for the sheriff's office. Other agencies do it all the time. Why aren't we going out to the military and asking them to, when these folks are coming out of the military, especially our military police officers, to come and work with us? Put them through the police academy and get them state certified. They have a wealth of training and experience, and that's what we need right now on the streets of Volusia County, serving alongside of us. We also need to do more to recruit young men and women to get involved in law enforcement at early ages as a police explorer. We used to have that program here 20 years ago. That's how I got into law enforcement. It's a wonderful program, and there's a lot of diverse teenagers in our high schools that want to come work for us. We need to be open and receptive to complaints and do a diligent effort whenever complaints are made to reassure the public with our body cameras and our information that we put forward that they are being treated fairly and that complaints are being thoroughly investigated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chitlin.
As a police chief, they put a high premium on diversity. I'm proud to say that 25% of my sworn officers and 50% of my civilians are minorities. The second thing is school-based and faith-based programs absolutely have to be installed. But the last thing, the elephant in the room is this. Americans are tired of turning on the television and watching unarmed civilians shot. If I am called to your home, man, because your 22-year-old son is off his medication and he smokes some crack cocaine and he's waving his sword around, and we show up, and 22 seconds after we arrive, we kill him. We kill him. That has to change. and we are in the process of changing them. I'm part of a national group of police chiefs that are about to institute 30 points that are going to be rolled out nationally. It's a perfect form. You can download it and read it. It talks about de-escalation, sanctity of human life, slowing things down, that training should be done. This is why we need a new leadership. You can't be trained the same way we trained before. This is what progressive police managers are doing around the country.
Thank you. Mr. Dietrich.
First, we need to make sure that we have professional respect that resonates from the top to the bottom of those officers. I want to address the numbers about our agency. I was reading an article from 2015 that actually talked about from the Florida Center of Investigative Reporting that talks about the issues of black police officers. And actually it quoted Mike Chitwood in that article where he made the comment that he was failing miserably. And in Daytona, the population is 34% black, and there was 14% officers that were black, which resonates the difference of 20%. Fort Myers was 31-13, Orlando was 28-16. The sheriff's office has, if you take back out the cities with the individuals that are African American, we have 7.2% African Americans, and the sheriff's office has 4.2% black officers. Now, we're not there, but that's a lot closer than the rest of the agencies in Central Florida. We have done a good job. We have a sponsorship program. That's something that I'm going to look to continue further, but that's a problem that needs to, society and the community needs to come together, and law enforcement needs to reach out, but we need the help of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Gillum.
Well, I was elected sheriff when we were under the edict of the federal government telling us how many of what minorities we had to hire. That lasted for all of 9 months. I learned my personnel hiring practices in the city of Denver. When I left Pasco County Sheriff's Office, I had over 800 employees, 539 deputies, and no feds looking over my shoulder telling me what to hire. You take the city of Daytona, 35% Hispanic. They don't have 35% Hispanic officers working there. In fact, some of the deputies complain because they handle calls and they're not able to speak to the complainants. Just curious. I'm sure there must be a reason for it. I don't know what it is, but I know I can fix it.
Thank you. And Mr. Bradford, you have the final 30 seconds on that one.
You know what's funny is the fact that I spoke about the same thing in 2012 when they said they're going to be out there trying to hire more minorities, and they have not. Matter of fact, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office is all giddy because they just promoted their first female black sergeant a couple of months ago or 6 months ago. In the history of Volusia County, come on folks, it is time that this county move forward. The world is spinning, but Volusia County is standing still, and they're not moving forward. We need a leader that's going to propel Volusia County into the 21st century, and that's what I would do as your next year.
Thank you. And the next question is to Mr. Brandon, and it is related to de-escalation. So many law enforcement departments in America are increasingly training officers in the use of de-escalation techniques in an effort to reduce the use of force. What is your use of such techniques?
The Sheriff's Office currently teaches de-escalation to our deputies. So the idea that we suddenly need this training as a new thing is already been there. We've been doing this through our crisis intervention training for the last 10 years. I'm a member of our crisis intervention team training, and I'm an instructor in doing the law enforcement block, and specifically the Baycraft. We talk to our deputies in that program, we train them on how to de-escalate. We provide our deputies with a wealth of less lethal options so that if they encounter a person who's actively resistant or presents certain weapons, we can use things like pepper spray, we can use a taser, we can use a 12-gauge drag stabilized round. Or we can use, most important weapon we have is our mouth. And we take our time and try to de-escalate using a variety of techniques and phrases that help slow that situation down and get that person to calm down and work with us so that we don't have to use force to bring them in custody. We would love for every situation to turn out peacefully. That's what every deputy wants, every police officer wants. Unfortunately, though, we can't always dictate the outcomes of those situations. The other person on the other side of that equation intends to do us harm, or they intend to do somebody else harm. And sometimes we have to swiftly act to protect not only ourselves, but other folks. I'm an advocate for de-escalation training, which we've been doing for a very long time in the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you. Mr. Chitlin?
The definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Clearly, it's the training that we all had for the last 20 years has to change. I was one of 23 American police chiefs to travel to Scotland to watch how the Scottish police, who were unarmed, deal with people who were mentally ill, armed with knives, bricks, bats, and nothing in their hands, and how they go to jail safely. That's what this report's about. It's about modern policing techniques in a modern society. The sanctity of human life has to be paramount in American policing again. Do you want a police department that's loaded with warriors or guardians? The mission of the American policing agency is guardians. Sanctity of human life. When available, time and distance is your friend. Use less than lethal options when they are available. Those are the things that are coming out now. It's not we've trained the same way for 20 years. It's what is going on in America today. What does the American society expect from us? And I believe they expect us to be guardians, not warriors.
Thank you, Mr. Deacon.
22 years, and what I've learned through that 22 years is your mouth is your most powerful weapon. The training that we provide our deputies, again, de-escalation is a rebranded word from crisis intervention training. We have been providing that training to our deputies. In addition, we also give them verbal judo training to give them the tools to be able to talk to people and actually give them up peacefully. I'll use an example. Numerous calls that we have where a peaceful resolution has come when violence, they've been presented with violence. Several weeks ago, there was a gentleman who called up and said, I'm aggressive, I'm heavily armed, and I'm mentally unstable. And we spent an hour and a half talking him out of the house. He gave up. When he came out, he said, I wanted you guys to kill me. I was going to use my cane as a rifle, but the plan that you put into effect interfered with my plan. That's the training. Calls happen day in and day out where we peacefully talk people out of the house using de-escalation techniques.
Thank you. Mr. Gillum?
Basic law enforcement training. In the 70s, we used to run a seminar at the police academy where we videotaped situations and taught our officers to talk people down. That's all you have to do. Talk. Various techniques that you do. Today, they have a more fancy name, but what you're doing is talking them down. Because the last thing you want to have to do is shoot somebody. It sticks with a law enforcement officer forever. You never forget that. It's with you forever. And we want to avoid that. Definitely, at all costs. Training is the key. I reviewed the Pasco Hernando Community College Police Academy. Their administrator was a wonderful guy. I convinced the school to put one of my law enforcement deputies in charge to be sure we were teaching law enforcement training and not academics. They get so close to each other, sometimes they're confused. You walk out there with a degree, but you don't know when to draw your gun and when not to, which is most important.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford.
We have to change the training. I've spoken to numerous deputies who are not afraid to speak out because two of their people are running for sheriff. And they're willing to come out and speak to me. And they said the training they have here is the same old training they always have. And the majority of their training has to do with self-defense. They don't have the training, they don't really have the training to come out here and deal with the community. The majority of the ethics training and all that, believe me, I've done it for 25 years. It's on the computer. You go, you take a 5-hour class or 4-hour class on the computer, but it's not in the classroom anymore because it's about saving time. And these deputies, talking about Baker Act, and talking about how they have the training to restrain these folks. The last time I heard about a Baker Act here in 2012, the deputies were told to leave the area if the person shot the neighbor, shot and killed himself as well. So we need better training out here, and that's what I will provide as your next sheriff. Better training and deputies out in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon, you have the final 30 seconds.
A lot of these answers are addressing the national issue. I can tell you here at home in the real world in Volusia County, we're not seeing excessive uses of force. Our deputies aren't going out and killing people every other day. They're out here, thousands and thousands of calls for service and bringing these folks into custody in a safe manner that's safe for them and safe for the deputy. So the suggestion that we're in great need of training and overall our entire system is just not accurate and it's not real.
Thank you. And next question goes to Mr. Chiplin. And this has been brought up a couple of times already. The deputies in Volusia County do accrue significant overtime every year. That means they're often working longer shifts, and studies the question whether deputies' decision-making, law enforcement in general, decision-making becomes unsound if they're working shifts that are too long or if they're working too many hours in a given week. Additionally, deputies who are working lots of overtime and are costing taxpayers more in pensions when they retire. As sheriff, how will you address the overtime question?
Thanks for the question. I can tell you long before I was a police chief, I was a police officer and a detective, and I worked stacks of overtime for a multitude of reasons. Number one, how much of that overtime in that question is detail overtime? In other words, somebody contracts with the sheriff's office and says, I need to hire a deputy for 12 hours, or there's mandatory overtime. So we have to factor that in. What we have in my budget is we look at what is investigative overtime and what is court overtime. They're the ones that I can control. But let's face it, these guys are trying to support families, and it's imperative on the leadership to keep checking the hours so you don't have that deputy who has worked 30 hours overtime in a 40-hour week, now he's working 70 hours. But the pension thing I'll touch on because I do collect pension. It's not much from the city of Philadelphia. And I work a lot of overtime. I was in the homicide division. You made $150,000 a year, you tripled your salary. But none of that counted toward my pension. It doesn't. My pension was a flat rate. Now, we have to deal with the unions, negotiations, but you have to look at where your overtime is being spent. We have the same issue with my department. We have what's called reimbursable overtime. Federal overtime is reimbursed. We contract with vendors that pay the overtime, and that's where a lot of our overtime goes. So it's a give and take. And the county manager will be allowed to hire more people and lower the overtime bill, because it's cheaper to hire somebody in overtime because you don't pay for the medical benefits, you don't pay for the pension, you don't pay for any of the other issues. So it's a convoluted issue. You have to look at the whole thing, you have to break it down where it should be.
Thank you. Mr. Deacon?
It's amusing to hear these comments about the deputies, working all this overtime. As a new deputy, I work a lot of overtime. It was a choice. And the majority of the overtime the deputies work is by their choice. We have policies in place that prohibit them from working past 7 days in a row. Sometimes those policies during special events, those policies are waived, so we can get those details covered. But the fact of the matter is, we have details where deputies can get overtime and they sign up for those. Again, I touched on the fact, when we have deputies that are deployed overseas within the armed forces, and we have deputies that are injured or on family medical leave act, by law, we cannot fill those positions. Those positions have to be filled through overtime. Now, as a manager, I will look to ensure that we hire and we get back up to staff. That'll be one of my priorities, and we can fill those, but there will always be overtime to ensure that your safety is covered out there. Again, we have measures in place to ensure those deputies aren't working excessively.
Thank you. Mr. Gill?
I mentioned earlier, long overtime is very hazardous for the deputy itself. This idea of positions. I was a sheriff for 8 years. I put the positions in the budget that I wanted. And if I had somebody that had a position that was going to be in the military, they would put them on this side, but we kept deputies on the street. Somebody's breaking into your house, kicking out the front door, the dispatcher's not going to say, please hold on, the officer you want is in Afghanistan. That's not going to work. Last week I called 911. My wife fell, I couldn't get her up. I needed an ambulance. I called 911. You know what he said to me? You have reached the sheriff's office, please hold. I talked to a recording. Come on, folks. Is that what you pay for? You pay for recordings and you pay for excuses. Jim Dillon does not give you excuses. And Jim Dillon does not give you recordings. You pay to talk to people. It's a public service emergency agency. That's what you pay for, and that's what you should get.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford?
A choice. When you have a choice, you're able to choose choose whether or not you want to work. These deputies have no choice. These deputies are told it is mandatory that you work these hours. Folks, in 5 months, let's get away from the deputies. They want to say to the deputy, okay, let's go to the communication center. In 5 months, it's cheaper to hire somebody, it's cheaper to pay the overtime than to hire somebody because you don't want to pay for the insurance and anything else. In 5 months, this county has spent, let's correct that, in 5 months, this county had utilized 27,991.25 hours of overtime in the communication center. Is that a choice? That's not working off duty. That is working every day. Folks, we need a leader that's going to stand up for you, and that's what I would do. And we need to get rid of all this overtime.
Thank you. Mr. Brennan.
The overtime issue in the sheriff's office is certainly real for both our deputies and our dispatchers. For the most part, the bulk of our overtime is because we have to, with public safety being the #1 priority of government, we have to make sure that we have deputies out there that are covering our streets and keeping you safe, whether someone's on vacation, they're sick, or on military leave, those vacancies have to be covered. In order to maintain our minimum staffing to protect you and the other deputies who are out there. We also need to make sure that there are folks there to answer the phone. So in the same situation, we need to make sure that there's a call taker there on the other end of the phone. But I do believe that we need to go back and take a reassessment of our staffing levels in the sheriff's office and make sure that we're providing the best level of service possible to the citizens of Volusia County. When I got here in 1993, we're almost at about the same staffing as we were today as we were then. Our zones are almost identical to what they were back then in '93. The population of Volusia County has doubled since then, and we need to make sure that we're providing the best service possible with the right amount of staff that's out there to protect you. Thank you.
Thank you. It might be done. Mr. Chitlin, excuse me, I'm going to try to call everyone on Mr.
Mr. is my father, so he's not here for this. Real quickly, I've been on both sides of the game. I was an aggressive earner, and the bosses managed my time, and now as a boss, I have to manage the overtime at Daytona Beach. But you have to remember something. I have a homicide. It shows full 48 hours for a reason. Those detectives are going to work around the clock so they can solve that case. Have you heard of things called Bike Week and Spring Break and 4th of July and New Year's Eve celebrations? We have to put officers out there. And when you don't have the resources, you have to tackle overtime. The trick is, how do you manage it? The way I manage it is very simple. Every dime I spend, I want to make sure I get a return on my investment. That's why I don't want anybody standing out with their hands in the pocket.
Thank you. And Mr. Dietrich, the next question goes to you. The sheriff's office has in the past used SWAT-like techniques on drug busts. That led to a situation in 2015 when a deputy shot and killed an unarmed man in an early morning drug bust in Daytona. That netted a relatively small amount of marijuana and some cash. What is your opinion of employing such techniques?
Well, what was used on that day was not a SWAT team, it was narcotics agents that were executing that warrant, where they knocked on the door and there was a disturbance at the door where the door was open and then it was shut. At that point, the deputies made an entry in there through the training that they'd been trained. And when we're doing those warrants, officer safety is #1 for them. And when they go in there, they are presented with situations that they have to make a split-second decision. Now, when you play that decision back after it happens, it can be critiqued. But at the time that happens, they have to make a decision. The answer is ensuring that we're using proper tactics. Again, that's a misnomer that there were SWAT tactics used on that or a SWAT team. That was a narcotics unit that was executing where they knocked on the door and the door was open. And then the door was slammed in their face and there was a tussle at the door. And then they made entry into the house to safely clear the house. A tragedy that occurred. And, but again, those officers are judged at the time when they have to make that decision of what they perceive.
Thank you. Mr. Gillum?
We try to do with drug situations to determine if there are armed subjects there. Sometimes you can't a lot of times you actually can. And in most cases, if there's a doubt, I always send my SWAT team. I just thought it was safer for everyone concerned. SWAT people generally are trained a little better for those really high tension situations because they train more for that than the average deputy does on the street. And we want everybody to walk away alive, but that guy's in handcuffs. I want the deputies to go home and have dinner with their families. You talk about budgeting for overtime and vacations. You do that when you put a budget together. I put 8 budgets together for Pasco County, and I budgeted for overtime, and I budgeted for vacation, and I budgeted for sick time, and I didn't force anybody to work overtime.
Thank you. Mr. Radford?
Well, we have to make sure that the intelligence that we have on these types of calls are correct. Something as little as a little bit of marijuana, I personally don't think that we need to be kicking in people's doors for that. Secondly, we're talking about our deputies working the overtime. We have the same amount of deputies patrolling today in the unincorporated Volusia County as we did back in the 80s, folks. We need new leadership. We need a leader that's going to stand up and say enough is enough. That's going to stand up in good times and in bad. And that's what I would do as your next sheriff. I would make sure the policies and the procedures here in Volusia County is reviewed, and the ones that need to be changed because they're outdated will be changed immediately. Because your safety is my utmost priority. Believe me, folks. You need a leader that's going to say, I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon?
Drugs are the underlying crime that affects almost all other crime in our community. Domestic violence, aggravated batteries, property crimes, and the community has put on law enforcement, rightfully so, an insistence that we go out here and go after the drug dealers. And our teams, whether they're narcotics investigators or our SWAT team, train regularly and go through a very thorough process before we knock on the door after we get our search warrant to go after those drug dealers. If you want us to go after those drug dealers, but unfortunately we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's on the other side of that door. And the inherent nature of drug dealing is most of these guys carry a gun and they wish to do harm to somebody else. So when I put a deputy through the door, whether it's on a person on a narcotics unit or the SWAT team, I'm going to insist that they have the best training possible and they do everything they can to protect themselves and the other folks on the other side of the door. And we train on these tactics regularly, and it's worked well for many years. It's very unfortunate, the incident that occurred in Daytona, but that man and the investigation proved out. That person fought with our deputy over the firearm and unfortunately was deceased as a result of that.
Thank you. Mr. Giblin?
I said this before, there has to be a paradigm shift in the organization. It has to be reflected in policy and procedures. It's about the sanctity of human life. Before you deploy your SWAT team, before you deploy any type of warrant service, you need to assess the entire situation. Who's in the house? What's the threat level? What's the risk level? And then you deploy accordingly. I am proud to say in my 10 years as the police chief, myself and my command staff have gone out on every single SWAT call. Every single deployment we're in a category where we're serving a warrant, I'm there and my command staff is there. Why? It's about leadership. The higher ranking you have a supervisor on the scene, the less likely the officers are to use deadly force. It's a proven statistic. And that's a change. That's why I'm running for sheriff. Open up the windows, let the fresh air of change come in, and let's welcome to how we should be policing in this millennium.
Thank you. And Mr. Giblin, 30 seconds to finish that question.
As a former SWAT commander and a former I oversaw in excess of thousands of search warrants, we have a policy in place. The use of the SWAT team is the use of force. So when we do these investigations on these narcotics houses, which bring violent crime into the neighborhoods and cause this crime, there's a matrix that's still out to ensure that the history that we know of the individual going in the house qualifies for the use of the SWAT team. We execute many warrants where narcotics, they're what you would call a low-risk warrant, but narcotics units do those where they knock on the door and get somebody to come to the door. The point of the matter is we never know what's behind, and firearms are always associated with narcotics houses. And you don't always get a pot of gold when that happens. But there's still points to be investigated to take those, to bring that and eradicate that from our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is to Mr. Gillum, and it's this. This is not a related question. Do you think it should be legal for people to have small amounts of marijuana for personal use? Why or why not?
No. There are enough problems with alcohol. We do. You know, one of my years in office, we had 1,700 DUI arrests. We led the state of Florida in drunk driver arrests. So now you take this fellow that's had 4 beers, which is legally doing, let him toke a little bit of weed there for a few minutes. But he only has a small amount for casual use. Now we put him on the road. We got a guy out on the road that's drunk as can be. You can test him for alcohol. How do you test him for the drugs in the system? It's, to me, and I see some of these, let's decriminalize it. That's a cop-out. That's a cheap way of saying, let's go get the taxpayers and build a bigger jail. So if we let more people walk away, but most of the time, drug-related things lead to crime. Not necessarily a guy's going to smoke a joint and break into a bank, but maybe he's going to smoke a joint and beat up his wife. Or beat up the guy sitting next to him in the bar. Because we all know those stories about beer muscles. Well, there's also dope muscles. It works the same way. And we're just adding to it. And then we're telling our children, well, it's okay, son, you need to be 16. You can have a joint if you like, because it's not illegal here. Nope, I guess it.
Okay, and I'm going to follow up with a question, and you'll get the answer toward the end. But for everyone else, just speaking personally, my son lives in the state of Washington, in Seattle, where marijuana, small amounts of marijuana are now legal. Crime hasn't increased, if anything, it's decreased. So should that be taken into consideration? And by the way, there are fewer people in the jail. Mr. Bradford.
Well, if the state of Florida decides that they're going to legalize it, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. Secondly, my mother, who has diabetes, lost her leg due to diabetes, has a small signs of dementia. You know, when she was in the hospital, they were going to give her marijuana to help her with her symptoms of nausea and for the diabetes and the Alzheimer's. I think that's a great thing. If you can get people off these pills that are killing people right now and get them on a little bit of marijuana to ease their pain, I have no issue with that. And stopping people for DUIs or DWIs, we do test for, when we take a blood sample, we do test them for marijuana or some type of illegal substance. Because that's why you have DUI, driving while intoxicated, and driving under the influence. But I do agree with Josh Ryder when he said that he wants to make sure that you write tickets with someone under 20 grams because we are spending thousands of dollars arresting people.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
I just want to be perfectly clear, I'm not an advocate for legalizing marijuana in the state for the purposes of recreational use. The Florida legislature has already authorized limited uses in medical situations. In fact, I believe the News-Journal reported today that there is a dispensary that is soon to open with others that are expected to come for the medicinal purposes to relieve some of those conditions. But I've talked to many families, and I've seen many families whose lives have been destroyed by drugs. And when you talk to those families, most will tell you that their person who's destroying their family and destroying their own lives got their start by smoking marijuana. It was just a little bit. It was cool. It was in high school or in other settings. But that's the gateway that leads to other uses of more hardcore drugs or pills that ultimately destroy their lives and add to our crime and our violence in our country. And therefore, I'm not an advocate for legalizing recreational uses of marijuana.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Real fast, the city of Daytona Beach has under 20 grams as a ticket. And the purpose behind that is, you know, spring break. I think every one of us in this room has made a mistake when we were a kid or in our early 20s, that we don't want that punishing you for the rest of your life. And I can also tell you, every one of us in this room, myself included, have probably had a family member that is, the drug problem has touched us. And I can go back and pull my family member and say, where she started, and where she started with smoking weed. When When I look at my juvenile delinquents that are arrested time after time after time for habitual truants, are arrested in stolen cars, what is it all traced back to? It was a little bit of weed, that it was a stolen car, and it was a gun for the property. So we have to be careful because it's a slippery slope. But I'm not for penalizing a young person who made a mistake, and that mistake is following the rest of their career and whether they take a job, went into the military, or getting into college.
Thank you. Mr. Dietrich.
I'm against the recreational use of marijuana. I do support the fact of allowing for medicinal purposes, but the one thing as a society and as a state that we got to be careful about is that there's proper regulation with it, and it doesn't get out of hand the way the pill mills got out of hand and destroyed and killed numerous lives in the state of Florida. As far as recreational use, you mentioned the crime rate hasn't gone up in Colorado and Washington. I think we need to look at the traffic homicide investigations that have gone up in Colorado. They've seen a 45% spike in traffic homicides involving the use of marijuana in Colorado. So that's something that, again, I'm against the recreational use of marijuana. As far as the decriminalization of under 20, I do believe that we can create a better system that allows somebody to pay a fine, which is what they would get to begin with, and not tie up the already busy justice system and allow them to pay that fine and move on. As long as it's at the discretion of the deputy, I support that.
Thank you. And Mr. Jones, you have the final 30 seconds.
Under uniform crime reporting that's handled by the FBI, possession of marijuana is not a part 1 offense and doesn't get reported in the crime rate. So it's not something you can visually see if the crimes are reported. Medicinal use, I'm in favor of it. But a few years ago, I was in Michigan looking at an ad in the paper, doctor, whoever it was, come by my office, give me $100 to write you a script for medicine. And I'm thinking, come on. We want people that are suffering not to suffer. But that's kind of circumvent the law. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you. And Mr. Bradford, the next question goes to you. Several readers on both sides of the gun control debate brought up the following issues today. Over the past couple of years, America has witnessed some terrible mass murders involving people using assault-like weapons such as the AR-15. Those include the recent attack in Orlando, at which 49 people were murdered and 53 were injured. The attacker in Dallas who killed 5 officers also used an assault-style weapon. Same with the attacker who killed the officers in Baton Rouge. Do you think such assault-style weapons should come under stricter controls? Why or why not?
That's a good question. First of all, the incidents that occurred in these past few incidents, they were mental health issues. The Orlando incident was a hate crime, and people want to put that as a gun control issue. It was a hate crime issue. The definition of an assault rifle is a weapon that fires multiple rounds with the pull of a trigger. These rifles that these individuals are using, I have one myself. I like to go out and practice with them so that we stop individuals, law-abiding citizens from going out here and purchasing these weapons so they can go out and practice like I do. We need to do better background checks, and we need to do more for our mental health people. We need to do better documentation so that these subjects go out and try to buy weapons, that these subjects are screaming and stop from buying weapons.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon.
In these instances that we've seen, very unfortunate, it's the person that caused that carnage. It wasn't necessarily the firearm itself. They could have used any number of weapons that caused that kind of carnage, whether it be a handgun with multiple magazines or a bomb or some other weapon. We've seen knife attacks recently in Japan with multiple people killed as well. We're going to start banning knives now all of a sudden. I mean, to take the hundreds of thousands of AR-15s and other type weapons out of the hands of law-abiding citizens is not the answer. We do need to provide more mental health resources in our community. That's critical. I've been an advocate for that for years. We need to provide more mental health services, community-based mental health services, so that we can identify these folks early on. We also need to do more to inform law enforcement officers and gun sellers of those folks who have been paid for acting, so that we don't put database system that will allow us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chitler.
I am proud and humbled to tell you that I am the only candidate on this stage who was endorsed by the NRA and I was given an A rating. The A rating stood for my stance on the Second Amendment. The A rating stood on my stance for self-defense, which we as Americans are all entitled under our Constitution, and for my anti-crime issues. Having said that, it defies logic of how somebody on a no-fly list can walk into a gun shop and buy a gun, and Congress is arguing about it. I don't get it. How somebody who's mentally ill can go out and buy a gun and slaughter people is beyond logic. Those are the things that need to be tightened. The last thing we need to do is, for my 20 years in law enforcement, folks that have a civil weapons permit overwhelmingly are the most law-abiding of law-abiding citizens. And that's where I stand on that. We got to go ahead and let no fly this. Mental health, we have to do a much better job, because that's what it comes back to. How does somebody mentally ill get a weapon and turn around and create an instruction?
Thank you. Mr. Dieter.
Passing more laws is not going to keep criminals from committing mass murder. They're going to find ways to do it. They don't follow the rules as it is right now. So passing a ban on assault weapons is not going to solve the problem. But what will solve the problem is the fact that we share information. We have members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force that have special clearance to the FBI. When these individuals are on the no-fly list, when they're on the watch list, that's something that local law enforcement should know when we encounter them. That information should be passed on, as well as if they go and fill out an application to buy a gun, during that background check, all these flags should be going up and they should be digging before they approve that permit. It's about sharing information, and it's about being diligent to keep the guns out of the terrorist hands, out of criminals' hands, and the mentally ill.
Thank you. And Mr. Dillon.
Guns don't kill people, people kill people. I'm a Second Amendment fan, always have been, a big believer in firearms, personal protection, home protection. One of the things we used to do, we get the drug dealers with guns, and half the time they have guns, we give them to the U.S. Marshal's office. A 5-year minimum mandatory sentence for a felony committed with a firearm. Not because the U.S. Marshal was a friend of mine, because that's what they did. We need to have stricter, tighter punishments for people that violate gun laws. We need to have a better screening policy and a database that tells us that somebody's not quite on an even level to protect our citizens.
Thank you. And Mr. Bradford, you have 30 seconds to close on that.
You know, I'll tell you about my brother. Our brother 10 years ago, a mental health person, he asked for help. Nobody gave him that help. He went to a gun range in Orlando, he rented a gun, he fired a couple rounds, and then he killed himself. So you would think that I would be an advocate to get rid of these guns. But you know something, if he would have got that help, if he would have received the help that he asked for, he wouldn't have killed himself. And here in Volusia County, you need a leader that's going to listen to what your concerns are and give you the help that you need.
Thank you. And Mr. Brand, you get the next question. So, the sheriff of Volusia County has a relationship with the county manager that's unique in Florida. For example, the county manager plays a role in hiring and firing in the department. And the county manager is here to the meeting. I have him weigh in, but you got to get out of here by 8 o'clock. But can you explain the relationship, why it exists, and whether it's a good thing?
The relationship between the sheriff and the county manager?
Yes. And how it's different in Volusia County than it is in other counties in Florida?
Sure. But the majority of counties in the state of Florida, the sheriff is a constitutional sheriff, which means that they are an entity unto themselves. In Volusia County, the charter form of government, which was passed in 1971, essentially made the elected sheriff a department head in essentially the hiring and firing of employees felt to the county manager, usually with a recommendation from the sheriff, and that's typically how that process works. The county manager and the human resources department of the county allow the sheriff to manage their personnel and handle disciplinary action. One of the things that I think we need to look at is our personnel board, which is part of the process. Unfortunately, the personnel board's recommendation isn't the final say, it's ultimately the county manager. And I believe that if the personnel board decides that the level of discipline that's been levied on an employee isn't appropriate, then that should be the final word. Those folks are appointed by the county council, they're presented, it's essentially a trial that occurs with the the legal department of the county offering their case, and the employee and their attorney offering their rebuttal to that. And if the personnel board decides that the employee isn't in violation or should not have been disciplined at the level recommended, then I think the personnel board's decision is what should stand.
Thank you. Mr. Chipman?
Volusia County is set up exactly like Daytona Beach is. As the police chief, the difference is I was hired by Jim Chisholm. Hopefully you folks out here are going to elect me to be your sheriff. It's kind of weird that you will elect me and then I don't have to answer for one individual. So the way it's set up is a little screwed. But as the police chief of Daytona Beach, I answer to Jim Chisholm. Jim Chisholm is my boss. I also have a relationship with the city manager. He is not only my friend, he is my mentor. When I make a decision, I don't have to jump through hoops. I go in and tell him, this guy needs to be fired. And he's fired. There's not a long drawn out process. There is no doubt I am the chief. I am in charge of Daytona Beach. And I would look forward, I have a very good relationship with Mr. Dean, and if I'm fortunate enough to elect me, I would like to continue that relationship. However, the sheriff needs to be the sheriff. He is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. He needs to make the decisions. He needs the support of county government to get done what it needs to get done. And in my opinion, there's some changes need to be changed. There's too much of a broken way of doing things right now. I didn't see that law.
Thank you. Mr. Booth?
As a leader, you have to be able to work with people. We have a charter form of government, and you have to be able to work with the county manager. In my experience with the sheriff's office and the sheriff, he has been able to make decisions, and the county manager has gone in line with the decisions that he's made. You have to have that power to run the agency, and in doing so, I know that Ben Johnson has been able to make those decisions that he wants to make, and the county manager has gone along with him. You know, as a constitutional sheriff, I can tell you that there's pros and cons to everything. And if we had a constitutional sheriff here, Dave and I, if we weren't fortunate to win this election, we might get fired after 22 years. I don't think that's right for what Dave and I have devoted our lives to this county. So there's pluses and minuses to every situation, but I believe it's all about working together and working as a team, not only with the county manager, but the rest of the local leaders in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Gill?
I was a constitutional sheriff, and I think you should have one. Anything that's connected to the Constitution remains. We have too much problem around this country right now, the people ignoring our Constitution. The Constitution has been for work for a long time. I work for the people of Pasco County. I want to work for the people of Volusia County. I don't want to be partner like a chief where I got to go to some manager. If I'm wrong, you can fire me. If I'm really wrong, I can get indicted. But you can't do the job when you're playing the political game. I didn't get enough deputies, so I appealed to the governor and governor. I got money, and I got deputies. That's what it takes to protect you, not to protect my job, to protect you, and that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford?
You know, as sheriff, it's my job to work with everybody. And if I have to work with the county manager, then I work well with him. And if I come with him with something, he can bet in his dollar that I'm going to have all my ducks in a row and all my documentation documented. With that said, the reason why Volusia County went to a former charter is to weed out corruption. It's been how long? It's been how many decades? It's time we went back to a constitutional sheriff. It's time that you had a sheriff that stood up for you. And I keep saying that, and you keep saying, well, he keeps saying standing up for you. Because that's the side of a good leader. And I truly believe it isn't the deputy's issue, it isn't the deputy's fault what's going on here, it's the leadership's fault. And we need a leader that's going to stand up for you.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon, you have 30 seconds on that.
Everything we do is about relationships. And I certainly, as a sheriff, want to make sure that I have a very positive relationship with the county manager on all issues, as well as the county council. in order to get things done, it's those relationships that are going to be, what's going to cause those things to happen or to not happen. When I was a captain in Daytona, I worked for 3 city managers there and for the sheriff at the same time. I can tell you that was a daunting task. But I managed to work well with all these elected officials, both at the county and city level, with the county manager, with the city managers that I work for. And as your sheriff, I'm going to do that as well. Working well with Mr. Dean and our county council. Thank you.
Thank you. And believe it or not, we are to the final question of this day. So, it goes to you, Mr. Chairman. The position of sheriff is different from that of any job that all of you are currently doing. And here's how. It's an elected position. As such, it's political. Now, I've heard people say, oh, well, if you're a sheriff, it's not political. But believe me, it's political. So, as sheriff, how do you balance the job of law enforcement with the politics that come with any elected position?
I am going to respectfully disagree with you. As a police chief for over 10 years, my job is extremely political. I have city commissioners that constantly call me. I have special interest groups that constantly call me. I have to deal with the union. I have to deal with all different stakeholders. The only difference is, if I wear the wrong tie to work in the morning, Jim Chisholm can say, see you later, Mike, have a nice day. I'll have to wait 4 years before I get voted out of office. But a police chief and a sheriff is exactly the same. The structure is the same. I'm running an organization. I'm responsible for the budget. And I'm responsible for the change that goes on. I am accountable to my community. I have to be at the forefront. Everything that you see me do in Daytona Beach is exactly what I'm going to do as your sheriff. There are no secrets in. I have no secret agenda. The same white chicken that's been here for 10 years is the same white chicken that's going to be your sheriff. And that's where I need your support. I don't need your support when I'm right. I need your support when we're wrong. And that's what I think it comes down to. It really comes down to a police chief and a sheriff are interchangeable. The difference is only in the election.
Thank you. Mr. Deacon?
I think everything in life you have to balance. When you go through challenges, when you get married, when you have children, you have to balance everything. Being a sheriff, you have to balance, yes, the last 22 years of being a law enforcement officer out on the streets, and then your situation changes to where you have to be involved in politics. But it's all about the maturity that you have and balancing that and ensuring that you're giving your deputies what they need to get the job done and you're providing safety for the citizens. It's something that you grow up doing, and every challenge that you come across is something that you have to accomplish. Working these past 6 months, I've got a lesson learned with that, of running an agency with an $83 million budget and also politicking on my own time. And it's something that you have to balance. And as your sheriff, I'm willing to do that and going to put 110% forward.
Thank you. Mr. Gillen?
Politics in the sheriff's office. I got a lot of people in Daytona County talk about getting along with the county. I found a slush fund. The county had a $19 million slush fund. That was the year they said, we give your deputies a raise if we had the money. They didn't like me. Politics, terrible. You've got to suffer through it. My third term suffered from politics. I went after the big boys in the county. We indicted 8 people on the largest real estate fraud in the history of Florida at that time. The next 8 we were going after included a county elected official and 7 big boys. And let me tell you, they poured money on my opponents, and you could drive away with a big truck. But you know what? I sleep good at night, and I can look in the mirror when I shave, and I'll do it again, because I want to be able to try for the taxpayer. At my age, I really don't care. What are they going to do to me? They can't cook me and eat me.
Thank you. Mr. Bradford?
The law is the law, and nothing can change that. It could be political all it wants. But when the law is broken, you have a duty to act. And if one of my deputies go out political because I'm out there speaking to make changes to bring new programs to Volusia County. Programs that will benefit everyone equally and fairly. That is why Lady Liberty is standing there blindfolded, her arms open. She's there blindfolded because everything is supposed to be here, law-wise, disseminated equally and fairly. Well, in Volusia County, I'm here to tell you it's not. And as your sheriff, I will make those changes to benefit everyone equally and fairly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brandon.
Your core values and your character are what going to determine how you handle yourself as a politician, as the sheriff of Volusia County. I can tell you that my entire life I've spent being a servant leader in every role that I've ever served in. And the core values that my parents raised me on, about hard work and dedication, about being honest and having integrity in everything that you do. If you do the right thing for the right reasons, then things are going to work out. You have to be, as a sheriff, you have to be a representative of both the agency and the men and women that work for you, but also for the people that you represent as the sheriff. And that's every person sitting in this room today. As your sheriff, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that our agency, as a servant leader, making sure that the men and women of the sheriff's office serve you at the best possible level they possibly can. And I'm going to give them the example and provide them with the resources and training to make sure that they do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chipley, you have the final 30 seconds.
When I get elected sheriff, everybody here has to understand, Volusia County Sheriff's Office is loaded with talent, waiting to explode onto the scene and push this office forward. I'm going to run it as a police department. It's going to be a meritocracy. Not who contributed, not who knows who gets promoted for assignments. We're not doing it. We're going to ban the phrases, we've always done it this way, and we can't do it. That's what I'm going to bring in. We're going to bring in change. And we're going to tap into the illustrious talent that we have there.
Thank you. Well, we've reached the end of the question and answer portion, and we have enough time left for each candidate to make about a 2-minute closing statement. We'll end up going over by 4 or 5 minutes, but not by much, so I urge you to just stick around for each of the candidates. And let's go in alphabetical order. Mr. Bradford, you have the floor.
Thank you for inviting us here again. This is wonderful. I have to tell you, folks,
Mr. Bradford, you just go ahead.
I've lived in Volusia County for the past 24 years. This is where my children were born and raised. This is where my lovely bride and I are living here. In the same house that I built in 1993. I just retired from Seminole County Sheriff's Office after 25 years. Why am I running for sheriff? Because within the 24 years that I've lived here, Volusia County has been the same. If you Google my name and look at the videos that I have placed on there from 2012, you will see that there's a lot of issues here that has not been corrected. We've taken deputies off the street, we've taken deputies out of the school, we've taken crossing guards off the streets for our children. We need to do more. We need a leader, once again, that's going to stand up for you. That's going to stand up for the community and make the changes for the communities equally and fairly for all. And that's what I would do. You know, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm not saying I'm a millionaire. I'm not saying that I make tens of thousands of dollars each week. I'm doing it because I love my community, and this community definitely needs changing. It needs a lot of enhancements. We do have a wonderful staff here. There are a lot of good deputy sheriffs here. But we need to give them the opportunity to blossom. Okay? It's not like the YMCA. We need to blossom. We need to show these deputies and give them the tools to come out here to be guardians and not warriors. Volusia County is more, and I've heard this over and over again, Volusia County is more of a militarized law enforcement agency. We need to change that perception, and we need to come back and be more of a guardian for you. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you. And you may applaud the candidate now if you like.
I want to again thank you all for coming out tonight. May I go ahead and thank you? You know, it's been a long journey for me. 15 years of age, starting in law enforcement. Here I stand before you as a candidate for sheriff of Volusia County after dedicating 23 years of my life to serving this community, this great community. If we want to move the sheriff's office forward, if we want to see economic development come forward in Volusia County, then you need me to be your next sheriff. I get it. I realize that we need more diversity in our sheriff's office, and I have strategies that's going to make sure that happens. Getting veterans to come in and work for us, getting more kids involved in youth programs in the sheriff's office. I also understand that the business community wants to see crime lowered in this county. The largest city, the most well-known city in this county has the highest crime rate in Volusia County. And that impacts all of us here in Volusia County. And I don't say that disparagingly against anybody. I just say that we all have to work together as a team, the sheriff, the police departments, to reducing crime in all of our communities. I don't see this as an us versus them. The bad guys have no boundaries, and we always seem to be putting walls up between our different agencies and organizations. Egos also cloud a lot of the things that we do. I'm going to set all that aside, and I'm going to serve you, because that's what you put me here for. I'm also going to stand up for the men and women of the sheriff's office. These folks put their lives on the line for you every day out here. They deserve your respect. They deserve your trust, because that's exactly what they're expecting from you. And they put it all on the line. They leave their families every day to make sure that they deliver the best services possible to you. They have been neglected for far too long, and I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of. And hopefully that will be a beacon and a shining example for other agencies in this county to do the same thing for their officers. I tell you, if you want strong leadership for a safer Volusia, then on August 30th, I'm asking you to vote for me, Dave Brandon, the next sheriff of Volusia County. Thank you.
Thank you all for your attention, and thank you to News-Journal. You know, Ben Johnson has done a great job the last 16 years. He really has. The election now is about the future. It's about somebody with a proven track record. It's about technology, which the city of Daytona Beach is a leader in technology. It's about de-escalation training. It's about ComStat, computerized statistical analysis of crime. It's about the community-based programs we had in Daytona Beach. School resource officer. First time in the history of the city, I had 10 officers in that school. It's about a PAL program where we teach our kids how to read. You know, being a police chief in Daytona Beach is a very unique position. It's very unique. We have the homeless issue. We have poverty issue. 30% of my kids that go to school with 3211 zip code, 60% of these kids live out of the poverty. We have a high number of tourists. My daytime population is 120,000. I get 6 million visitors a year come in. Probation, parole, social services are all there. But guess what? Contrary to what Dave says, in the past 10 years, we've lowered crime by 20%. The city has seen the lowest numbers of robberies, burglaries, stolen cars, and homicides. 21% reduction in homicide. How did we do it? We did it by all the things we talked about. We did it with shrinking resources and a shrinking budget. I am the only proven leader on this stage. I don't need time to learn. I don't need to go out and form coalitions. We have done it. We have been successful in Daytona Beach. We have programs that are nationally recognized. And I encourage you to come to my crime meetings. They're open to the public. There's no games there. Come and see our real-time crime center. It's not an election promise. It's something right. Why did the sheriff's office take 4 years to put the body cameras in place? Why? I need your vote. It's time for change, and I'm a change candidate.
Thank you all for coming out. 22 years, very proud to stand here. 22 years work for this great agency. An agency, again, our lowest crime rate in 30 years. An agency that has seen 4 gold standard accreditations. We talk about national police standards. The sheriff's office was the first sheriff's office in the nation to achieve 4 gold accreditation standards. That speaks volumes to the leadership that we have, the policies that we have in place, and the people working for our agency. We have a great agency. The question is, how do we make it greater? The answer is Eric Dietrich for your next sheriff. I will use technology and infuse that into our department to allow us to do the job safer and more effective for you. Number one thing that I announced in January, as we need to be prepared for any acts of domestic terrorism. The sheriff needs to take the reins and run with this county. There's 12 other law enforcement agencies. We need to make sure that when there's an active shooter or an act of violence at any school, mall, building, that everybody is on the same page when they respond there from a patrol level. Because to figure out the plan and what they're going to do is not when they get there on scene. It's to train and practice to do it now. And that's something that can be done at zero tax money. We hear a lot about programs. I'm going to create a multi-agency rapid response plan and training. It's going to be zero. Just getting the heads of the training departments and all those agencies in a room. The same thing I did as our SWAT commander for all the Central Florida SWAT teams, where we met once a month and we were able to bring all those teams together if we need to do that. I understand budgets. We hear about programs. We hear about 311 centers. The city of Minneapolis in 2006 instituted a 311 center, $6.2 million. We want to give our deputies raises. They deserve more money. How are we going to do all that? Number one most important thing is we have to pay the deputies to put their lives out there on the line and get them a raise and use creative thinking to solve the other issues in the county. Again, lowest crime rate in 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to get invited to something. Last couple of days, he was me for some reason. Don't know why. Maybe because my lips get a little loose from time to time. And they didn't charge me to come in. Some places want you to rent and pay for it so you can talk to taxpayers. Makes no sense to me. But let me say this. I resent that people they prove later, Michael. Give me a break. These guys are all nice guys. When you like the sheriff, I keep them all except Michael Dietrich, and so I'm kidding. They're all nice guys. I have been a sheriff in Florida. I have a large agency, 3,100 sheriff's offices in the United States. It was one of the largest 36 in the country. 800 employees, 539 deputies. I know what I'm doing. I paid my first pay in 1968. I was playing heroin dealers in jail when most of these gentlemen were still in little small school. I know what I'm doing. Now, I can get along with the government here, but I'll tell you one of the first things I want to do is sit down with the Florida Sheriff's Association and find out how to reconstitutionalize this office so it works for the people. I'm tired of politicians. I hate being a politician. I didn't want to run for sheriff, but you can't get appointed and really do a good job. At my age, I really don't care anymore, but I'm not happy with what I'm seeing. I've been to crime scenes, I watched 9 deputies. That's not true. 5 deputies standing around while one's working. Looks like a county construction job. One guy that moves the shovel and 4 tell him where to dig the hole. That's not how your money should be spent. That's not how your money should be spent. I know how they group some of the calls together. Come on, guys. Let's get honest with the citizens. Tell them what we're doing and do what needs to be done. Put deputies in your neighborhood, train them the way they need to be trained, and put bad guys in jail. That's all there is to it. And it's simple. I've been doing it for a long time. I'll be glad to do it again for you.
Couple things before you leave. First, let's give the candidates one more round of applause. And let's give Stetson University one more round of applause. News-Journal will moderate a debate between Democratic candidates for the 6th Congressional District. That debate will take place right here. Doors open at 5 p.m. and the debate will begin promptly at 6:30. You're all welcome to attend. News-Journal managing editor. And I don't know where he is, Eric Patron will moderate that debate. We hope to see you there. Have a great night.